So you may have heard about the Penn State scandal, one of the biggest scandals in sports history that happened about 5 years ago. Joe Paterno was a legendary head coach at Penn State for 45 years. Jerry Sandusky was the assistant coach for 32 years. Sandusky was convicted of sexually abusing young boys. Paterno was accused of covering up for Sandusky. Now what if I told you all of that is false, and everything you ever thought you knew was inaccurate? Jerry Sandusky is an innocent man who fell victim to a false conviction of sexually abusing young boys. Now, the incident that was first reported on by the media that led to all of this is what is known as the Mike McQueary shower incident. Mike McQueary, a former grad student and assistant football coach at Penn State, testified that he witnessed Jerry Sandusky sexually abuse a young boy who we know as victim 2 in the showers at the Penn State locker room. Now, there are like 3 problems with this alone. First off, McQueary never mentions anything about sex until 10 years later when he's approached by authorities. You say to have witnessed an act of sexual intercourse between a man and a young boy. Why would you wait 10 years? Why would you wait 10 years and then say something once you're approached by authorities? Second, McQueary testified to the wrong day, month, and year of when this happened. He basically forgot. Again, thirdly, McQueary forgets. Like, he changes his story a number of times. He goes from not saying anything about sex to saying that something that could have been sexual in nature. Goes from saying this happened after 9/11 when it happened before. 9/11 was a world devastation in the U.S. Why wait? How do you forget that something big happened, especially when something even bigger like 9/11 happens right afterwards? Like, you don't just forget something like that. Victim 2 thought of Jerry Sandusky as a father. The two of them were really close. They had a father-son relationship. Victim 2 is most prominently known as the boy in the shower. Around the same time Jerry Sandusky was arrested and Joe Paterno was fired as the head coach at Penn State, Victim 2 came forward and said nothing happened. He gave his statement and said nothing happened. Victim 2 at the time was a former Marine and at the time a grown adult. And he was saying they were just horsing around, there was nothing sexual about the situation at all. So why keep the case moving forward? Why continue a case when the only witness in the case isn't exactly credible and the only victim that was witnessed is saying nothing ever happened? Like, why? I mean, you don't have any proof anymore. Jerry Sandusky is a pedophile. Well, what's your proof? The media made a mistake, rushed to judgment, and labeled an innocent man as a pedophile because of the wording used by prosecuting attorneys in the presentment after Jerry Sandusky was indicted. The media spent countless of hours trying to one-up each other that they painted Sandusky to be an absolute monster. And they were so consumed on the idea of having the biggest story, the story that would sell the most, that they didn't care what happened to Sandusky at all. And once they labeled him as a pedophile, everyone else thought so too, because all anyone ever heard about was what the media was saying. And they didn't care. Media didn't care. They wanted to have the biggest story. This is like a modern day Salem witch trial. Jerry Sandusky, a unique individual, is targeted because of the power the media has. And once they labeled him a pedophile, everyone else was either convinced he was a pedophile or they were too afraid to come up and support him because they didn't want to be labeled a pedophile themselves. Just like in Salem, every witch targeted was unique. They were different. And once you basically were already sentenced, you already had your sentence before your trial even began. And so why would someone come forth and say, oh, this person's not a witch, when, well, I mean, you're going to be considered a witch yourself. Like, you don't want to be that yourself. And so, just like in Sandusky's case, no one wanted to be labeled a pedophile themselves. They don't want to be a pedophile supporter. It ruins a person's life. Look at what it's doing to Sandusky alone. Like, it ruined his life. He's in jail because of it, because of mistakes made. Even he's far from being a pedophile. Even his prison psychologist who's actually gotten to know him pretty well in prison, doesn't consider him a pedophile. So why everyone thinks he is when there's no proof that he is out there? Jerry is different. He didn't grow up like you and me. He didn't grow up with the same boundaries, the same life skills, or the same everyday things you and I have and consider normal when we were children growing up. But just because you're different doesn't mean you're a pedophile and doesn't mean you should be targeted. There's absolutely no evidence out there proving that Jerry Sandusky is a pedophile. There's no evidence proving, so why continue to say that he is? Jerry Sandusky is a victim who fell victim to a false conviction. Jerry's appeal is still going on. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that you have to believe he is innocent, because that's for you to come to terms with. But he's never had his day in court, and no man should have his entire life ripped to pieces and torn apart based on half-truths and false allegations. It would take a long time for me to convince you and for me to even explain to you everything that has happened and everything that's gone down. This is just the beginning in understanding the truth about what actually happened. John Ziegler is a documentary filmmaker and talk show host, and he has dedicated himself into finding the truth, to finding what really happened in the Penn State scandal. He went at this trying to prove Joe Paterno was innocent, because Joe Paterno never had his true day in court. He passed away beforehand. So he wanted to prove Paterno's innocence. And when he went at this, he was convinced that Sandusky was guilty. There was absolutely no doubt in his mind that Sandusky was guilty. But the deeper and deeper he got into researching this and understanding what happened, he proved not only to himself but to others that Jerry Sandusky is innocent. He did what no one thought was possible. He did the impossible, and he probably will never get credit for it, but he did it. He proved Jerry Sandusky's innocence. John Ziegler has created a website, framingpaterno.com, made a documentary, The Framing of Joe Paterno, done countless of national media interviews, done several interviews with Jerry Sandusky alone and his wife Dottie, and has proved not only to himself but to others that Jerry Sandusky is innocent. If you take the time and look and just go in, try to find the truth, you will come to terms with the facts that Jerry Sandusky is innocent, and this was a misunderstanding. It blew up out of nothing.